Welcome to the Conversation Lab. I'm Don Schaefer. If democracy begins in conversation, then we need to nurture a culture where ordinary people like us routinely talk about those things that help us understand each other, whether it's about climate, race, religion, gender, or politics. When we're trying to make sense of our city and the world we live in, every question comes with a set of assumptions about the nature of ourselves and our place in a larger world. The Conversation Lab provides a safe place to talk about some of those things. This program is produced by CFRO-FM in Vancouver. It's available on air and online on various platforms, and we appreciate the help of Vancouver's community groups. Dave Doroghy is an international sports marketing executive who's worked on 2 consecutive winning Olympic bids. His career has spanned broadcasting, advertising, and he was the vice president of the former NBA Vancouver Grizzlies. He now lives on a floating home where he raises bees. He's even written a book about them called Show Me the Honey. Thanks for joining us, Dave. I'm wondering if you could do a brief introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and I'm just worried that I've missed something.
Well, my name is Dave Doroghy, and most of my career was in broadcast advertising, the sports business. I was the director of sponsorship sales for the Olympic Games, so I headed up the revenue for 2010. I've worked on a few Olympic bids. I've lived in London, where I worked on their bid for the Olympics. I was also of interest, the vice president of the Vancouver Grizzlies NBA basketball team here in Vancouver, and moved with the team to Memphis. So I've lived in the UK, I've lived in the United States, and that's the business side. And I've always loved writing throughout my whole business career. I enjoyed writing business letters and enjoyed the art of writing. So when I hit my 60s, I kind of left the sports marketing business and pursued my passion of writing. And I've written 3 books. Got a contract for my 4th and shopping around my 5th. And I also, a little bit unusual, I live on an old beat up dock on the Fraser River, an old barge that was used to haul sawdust up and down the river, which we converted into a 4-bedroom house. And so I live on a bend of the river, secluded all by myself. And I raised bees on the back of my float home and wrote this book. But right now I'm writing. I teach at 3 different universities. I teach international sports marketing at the University of Vienna, where I go in person once a year. And I teach the same course in New Delhi, India. And I've been teaching that course at BCIT for 30 years, believe it or not. That's my alma mater. I graduated from BCIT in broadcasting in 79. So that's kind of a business guy. Little bit kind of quirky hobby about bees, loves writing. That's it.
So I'm curious, what calls to you? What got you started?
I think that just my mother always told me the more things in life you're interested in, the more interesting your life becomes, is the best advice she ever gave me. And the one innate quality that my students that I look for, that I hope they have, is just curiosity. I mean, look at you, man. Somebody told me you're getting, I think your master's or something, and you're gone back to school and you're interested in a ton of things. And so your life is interesting. People would say, Don Schaefer's got an interesting life. Well, you kind of made it that way because you became interested in things. For me, you know the story so well, Don. You're 12 years old and you just want to be a disc jockey so badly, and you're listening to all your heroes on the radio. And I was that kid. I was 14, 15, couldn't get to sleep at night at 1 a.m. listening to CKLG and listening to Schaefer in the Box and wanting to become a broadcaster. And there's so many people our age that just were dying to get into radio in the 60s and 70s. And that career path for me came to an end. I was disappointed, but it's a tough business, but I just got a lot of interest. Life is full of so many interesting things.
So what was it like to work on an Olympic bid? That's got to be life-changing.
Oh man, I mean, there's no second place kind of. You either win it or you don't. And we put all our eggs in one basket. It was 2003, July the 2nd, 2003. I'm in Prague, and Jacques Rogue, the president of the IOC, I went over there with the delegation, is going to make the announcement as to where the 2010 Summer Olympics were going to be. And I knew that the second before the announcement and the second after would be different for my life. I had spent a year working on the bid, pouring my heart and soul into Vancouver, beating Salzburg and Pyeongchang, and we were bidding against Harbin, China, Yucca, Spain. Back then, 8 cities wanted it really badly. Things were different. And I knew that if he reads Vancouver, my life will change, because I assumed it would open doors for me to work on the Olympic Games. And he opened the envelope. And, again, a year of my life working on this bid, raising money, campaigning, doing all the planning. And then Jacques Rogue, the president of the IOC at the time, it's Thomas Bach now, but Jacques Rogue said the 2010 Olympic Games are awarded to the city of Vancouver. And boom, I thought, wow, this is going to change my life. A year and a half later, I got the job to head up the sponsorship sales, the revenue side of the Olympics, which was we raised a lot of money. And, that was just life-changing, just the proudest moment of my life. The day of the opening ceremony is the day we won it. Just really proud to be associated with something world-class and proud to give it your best and to be Canadian. It had so many wonderful attributes. My mouth hurts when I talk about the Olympics because I just smile so hard, every day. I hated Fridays because you had to go home from work, I couldn't wait for Monday to begin so we could jump into more meetings and do more plannings for this great event. I'm a huge Olympic fan.
Are you still in touch with many of your pals from those days?
I am. And anybody, not only was it a great event, but from a career point of view, when you have that on your resume, you tend to go on to loftier, bigger things. It's an endorsement of you being a problem solver, being innovative, being hardworking. And because it was a success, I think it propelled a lot of careers out of when 2010 was over. People went on to some much bigger, not much bigger, but went on to great things. Most people didn't go back to their Monday to Friday 9-to-5 day job. They aspired to do other great things.
What would you share with us about what you learned or what you carried with you from those days?
A project of that nature really requires collaboration more than any other project I've worked on. What I liked about it, I'd been in the corporate world, for 20 years working in the NBA and the NHL and working for ad agencies and radio stations, whereby you're climbing the corporate ladder and you're trying to get the next job up, So when I'm a manager, I want to be director, I want to be VP. At the Olympics, I was given a 5-year contract. They said, Dave, here's your job. And that's what you're going to do for 5 years. And together, we're going to work together to make this happen. So it didn't have the competitive nature of most jobs. And I've got a lecture that I've prepared about everything I've learned about organizing the Olympics. I've learned from my bees, because the way bees collaborate and the way that we had to collaborate, Don, we had 52 different departments at VANOC, and they all had to kind of be intertwined and come together and you only had one chance to get it right. And most people are doing it for the first time. So it had a lot of areas where it could go off the rails. So every department had to work with the next department, leave your ego at the door and just kind of come together. And John Furlong, who I think the world of, who was our president, for the Olympic Games, was an incredible leader. He was like the queen bee.
I'm struck by your analogy. Everything I've learned from the bees.
Well, did you ever see our office on the VANOC office on Gravely Street? It was a 7-story. We had 1,400 employees, and we had an office whereby we would fill up one floor and go to the next floor. It's a big box, go to the next floor. And when I'm keeping my bees, I keep on adding boxes on top, once one box gets full of bees and they're running out of space, I add another one. And that's what VANOC felt like. I started 5 years out. We only had 103 employees, and I left, there was 1,400. So it's like a beehive. And my job was to go out, like when you look at bees, there are forager bees that go out and search for the honey and the pollen and search for that and come back and tell the rest of the hive where the honey is. And that was kind of my job as the director of sponsorship sale. I'd fly to Toronto, find out which companies are spending money. I'd fly back, and then I'd tell the others. And then I'd go back there with John Furlong, and we'd set up meetings with the president of Air Canada or the president of IBM, so I was a forager bee, a worker bee. And then there's when I've got this idea for a lecture that I want to do called, everything I learned from the Olympics, I learned from keeping bees. But they are so, and it's a good segue into what we'll probably be talking about, but, their incredibly sophisticated, complex, dynamic social work structure is something that I never even thought of till I got into it. Now I can't get enough. I'm really interested in bees, but I like writing about them more than I like keeping them, because it's a hell of a lot of work to be a beekeeper. Yeah.
I like the title of your book, Show Me the Honey, Adventures of an Accidental Apiarist. Did your sister really give you 15,000 bees?
She really did. She was, we're out on the, on the float home one day, and she says, she looks around, and I'm on River Road West in Ladner, kind of in a bucolic area. Behind me is a potato field, and there's raspberry bushes everywhere, farmers. In front of me are 3 deserted islands. It's all green. And she says, this would be a great place for bees. And I said, well, as long as you do the work, you can put them here. I don't want anything to do with them. And as long as they don't sting me. So her and her husband come out late one night, and they bring the hive out in their costumes in the middle of the night. And halfway through them coming out, I realized I'm on a tidal estuary. My float home goes up and down 15 feet every day with the tides. And it's very important when a bee leaves the hive that it comes back to the exact same spot, because its honing device is all based on where it left from. And the thought struck me. I thought, oh, as she's driving out with 15,000 bees, I phoned her and I said, stop. It's a half-baked plan. You're going to put them here. And when the tide moves up, they'll leave the hive in the morning, go out and forage. They'll come back in the afternoon. They won't be able to find the hive. It's been moved 15 feet. Doesn't sound like much, but it's a big deal if you're a bee. She says, too late, I'm coming with them. She was well on her way. So we did it. And we told the entire beekeeping community in BC, which isn't hard. There's a beekeeping club in Vancouver, and, told others what we're doing. And they said, that may or may not work. Like, nowhere in the wild, Don, would bees build a hive like on a log on a river that goes up and down. Just not a good place to keep them. So everybody had their opinions, like, this will work, it won't work, the bees will compensate. Well, in the end, my first year, we got 100 pounds of honey. And so, it was a huge success. The bees completely compensated with the movement. And my sister Miriam entered the honey in a competition, and it won the second best tasting honey in BC. So I wrote a story about that. I'd hand it out with my honey. And then somebody said, this is great. You should keep on writing. So that became a book that I wrote that gets into, it's a self-deprecating look at just how difficult beekeeping is. And you learn a lot about bees themselves reading it, but it's funny. It has tension. It has all the elements of storytelling that you wouldn't find in a textbook. It's not a how-to book. It's a how not to book.
To be honest, I haven't finished it, but I've watched a couple of lectures you gave and some videos that you've shown on the internet, which are really quite fascinating. How long between the time you started with the bees to when you wrote the book?
Probably about two or 3 years into beekeeping, it became clear that there's a lot going on that is super interesting, and it helped me engage. My girlfriend and my sister are really into it. And my relationship with my girlfriend, Jeannie, who is an excellent beekeeper. I'm not a good beekeeper. To be a good beekeeper, you need to be in the moment. It's very zen. I go into the hive with my cell phone ringing late for a meeting. I drop my tool and knock something over. I'm kind of the keystone, but Jeannie's really good. And I wanted to engage with her in this hobby, something a couple could do together. And I found that by writing, every time I went out with her, something would happen. And I couldn't wait to get back to write about it, So it spurred on my interest in bees, having a project to be writing. So the writing fed the beekeeping and the beekeeping fed the writing. And it worked out great. And it took me, I'm embarrassed to say it, Don, it took me 2.5 years to write the book, It's like a marathon writing a book.
Oh, this was the second book?
Yeah, I've got another really interesting project that came my way. And there is a publisher in Germany that is kind of like for people, the travel books. Okay, so we got The Lonely Planet, you've got Fedora's, Michelin. This company publishes a global series of travel books in every city in the world. They have 400 titles: Paris, New York, Moscow, Madrid. And the books are called 111 Places That You Must Not Miss in Vancouver, in Whistler, in Victoria. So we got the contract, my writing partner Graham and I, to write a guidebook in Vancouver, to do quirky, unusual things that no one knows about in Vancouver. And we completed the first one, and it was successful. And they asked us to do one on Whistler. So we just completed that one. And now we've just signed a contract to do another book for them on Victoria. So while I'm writing my bee book, I've also got this travel guide thing happening, which is, I never thought I'd be writing about travel guides and bees when I was an executive in the Olympics. So it's kind of, again, it makes life interesting.
What's the biggest takeaway in the book about bees?
I guess it would just be the, sounds corny, it sounds David Suzuki-ish, but just the resilience of nature. And they've been around for 1 million years. They'll be around for another 1 million. We might come and go. They're just so adaptable and so smart and so well. It's jaw-dropping, the beauty, the simplicity, the elegance of them. And it's mind-boggling, the complexity of them at the same time. It sounds like a contradiction, but you could say the same thing about any insect. I wrote about bees, but I could have written about ants, or I could have written about mosquitoes. Everything is interesting.
Yeah, but you were into bees.
And also bees provide a reward for us. Honey, they're useful. We like honey. But in my book, I've got a chapter about one of the parasites that are really disturbing beekeeping, rocking the cart, are called the Varroa mite. It's the size of a piece of pepper. Okay, let's see. And it is a blood-sucking parasite that attaches itself to the bee and literally sucks the blood out of it. Okay. And 25 years ago, this Varroa mite did not exist in North America. And now 1 out of every 2 hives in North America will die because of this parasite, the mite. It's destroying the bees. So we fumigate our hives. We put a gas in the hives to kill the mites. Believe it or not, this gas called oxalic acid